Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And good evening, everybody. My name's RJ Carter. I'm the senior managing editor here at criticalblast.com, where pop culture gets blasted. And I know I look a lot like Nerdrotic lately. I said that last night. The new glasses. I'm looking at the screen like, what's he doing on my show? Hey, Nerdrotic, if you ever want to come on the show, we'd be glad to have you. Bring your count of subscribers with you. If you're going to come, bring your watchers. Tonight, we're going to get into some more crowdfunded comics. But we're going to shift over from the Indiegogo side of the house. We spent a lot of time there. We got to show some love to the Kickstarter side of the house. And quite frankly, our guest tonight has got this one mastered, because while I've spent a lot of time with first issue, second issue guys on Indiegogo, sometimes a third issue where they get successful, our guest Mike Shea at Miskatonic High is up to issue number 10. Mike, what is the secret of your success with this thing?
My secret to all of my success is blind stupidity.
You know what? That works for so much.
It really does.
If you don't know what you can't do, you just do it.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if we're talking seriously, for us, I'm being relatively serious when I say we just sort of, half-assed it our way into it. We made so many mistakes, and yet somehow they turned out right. So Ryan Mendoza is the artist and co-creator on Miskatonic High with me. We were doing fan fiction before this. We were just, making comics for ourselves, putting them out there, and we found that we really liked them. So we decided to go ahead and make a comic that we could actually, sell, and hope that people would like it. And, in our kind of stupid brains, we thought, okay, we'll put together 6 issues and we'll send them to like publishers like Marvel or DC. And, they're going to want to publish them. They're just going to pick them up. Yeah. And so we did like 5 or 6 issues and sent it out, and we heard absolutely nothing. I think the high point for us was when we got a form rejection letter from Dark Horse. Like that was like, way to go us. So we were sitting on these 5 or 6 issues. We had run out of money. We didn't really know what we were going to do. And we had no idea how to put this out. We thought, okay, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to do it like a page at a time as a webcomic? That's something we could do. We could release it digital only, just sell it from our, our website for a couple bucks and just do that. Or I guess we could do, Comixology or something like that. And I can't remember whether it was Ryan or myself who said, maybe we should look at like kickstarting a comic. And like for me, where I was, the only thing that I knew about crowdfunding at the time was Veronica Mars. Like that was my touch point. Like, yeah, you can make things and people will give you money for it to make it. Yeah, okay. So started doing some research and decided, okay, well, let's go ahead and do this. Let's put the first one up on Kickstarter, and maybe we'll get 15 people who will like it and buy it, and it'll be a major success for us, and it'll be great. And so we did. We put it up. We put the first one up. I expected, I'm not kidding, like the most we ever expected was maybe 100 people. Like we thought that would be a really good first issue for us. Is like 100 people, maybe $500, something like that. And so we put it up. And next thing you know, we reached like $4,000 and like 300, 400 people. And we were like, how did we do this? And more to the point, how do we do it again? And this is kind of where the blind luck helped us out. We were sitting on 5 issues. So the moment that we fulfilled the first issue, we could launch the next one.
Sure.
The moment we fulfilled the second one, we could launch the third one. We were coming out, and we still come out on a bi-monthly basis. Every 2 months, we come out with a new issue. And that regularity, comics fans are used to that. Like that's a real publishing schedule. That's, a Dark Horse, an Oni. It's like a real independent comic comes out every 2 months. And so people just really respond to that. They like, okay, if you're going to do this as a real regular comic, we're going to respond like real regular fans and just buy it on a regular basis and, follow it. And we really lucked into that. And because we had that success, because we had those issues in advance, it became so easy to stay that far in advance. So we're working on, we've already finished issue 13. It's all ready to go. We are working on a secret thing right now that we're really excited about. That's going to come out after 13. And, then we're going straight into season 3 for us.
And you've even done a crossover with
Lovecraft PI.
Lovecraft PI.
That's right. So one of the things that we figured out early on was, if we're going to be an indie comic, nobody's going to tell us no. We don't have an editor there saying, oh, that's not a good idea, you shouldn't say that. Or, we don't have a publisher saying, well, you can only, interact with these characters from our line of comics. You can't interact with these people or those people. And we realized, you know what? We can do whatever we want. That's the joy of indie comics, is you can do whatever you want. And as long as you're entertaining your backers and keeping them happy and doing the best work that you can, people respond to it. Like, we were amazed when we put it out because people were psyched about it. Indie comics on the Kickstarter Indiegogo level doing crossovers. Again, what you were talking about before, about a lot of these comics don't get past 1 or 2 issues. They don't have time to generate who the characters are and then get them crossing over with some other thing. You just don't have the time for that.
Exactly.
And so,
I've actually got your numbers here, because I was working on another project and you kind of fell into my lap while I was doing it. So you're the long line here, because nobody else I was working on is at 10 issues. I didn't count 10 because you're still funding on that one. But I'm just looking at crowdfunded books that have got 2 issues or more of the same franchise. Mm-hmm. And what I was trying to find out is whether or not people get in on the hype and then fall off, or which ones are, showing the stick-to-itiveness. Now, these are sorted by percent change from last issue over first issue. So, 2 issue to 10 issues it's not really eggs to eggs on that one.
Right.
But, you're right here in the comfortable middle where you're showing, in fact, we're bringing down here, this is you right here. Look at, you got a steady increase. You're not setting the world on fire at a single issue level yet.
Right.
But you've got the stick-to-itiveness where, some of these others might not be here next year, and you'll still be putting more rows out here. At least that's the trend I'm seeing.
Right. And, I got to tell you, for like even my normal life, I don't hit, home runs. I hit singles, but I consistently hit the singles. I'm like that baseball player who's just consistently getting on base. And, again, when I go to Vegas or whatever, I'm the guy who sits there. I bet $5 a hand for 14 hours. I'm a grinder. That's what I do. I look at the next step of what I got to do, and I do it. And then I look at the next step, and that's the thing. And, I'm kind of amazed that more comics, especially on the indie level, aren't sort of following this trend, because I really think it's open there for anybody to do it. Both Indiegogo, Kickstarter have really shown that there's an audience who is hungry for independent comics.
Yeah. Well, they've gotten, and I don't know where you fall on the whole philosophy of where the industry is nowadays, but a lot of people are talking about the comic industry is dying. And at the same time, this is a renaissance for the comics industry, because look at all the indies. I'm looking, personally, me, I got almost 30 white long boxes over here off my side here, almost exclusively DC, a lot of it Marvel. And I can't, it's been months since I bought a DC comic, and it's been years since I bought one that I liked.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where if I don't like it, why am I buying it?
Well, and for me, what I find is the new voices that I like tend to come out of indie comics, whether it's, the micro level that I'm working at, or even, like a Dark Horse, like an Oni or wherever. Those are the voices that I like. And I find when they're new and they're exciting and they have something cool to say, that I like them. And then a lot of times those voices, by the time they get to DC or Marvel, if they do it, they aren't as fresh anymore.
Right.
Maybe it's editorial side, watering them down, telling them the things that they can't do. I don't know what it is, but usually by the time that they reach that level, I'm not as interested anymore, you know, and it could be my bias that I like indie comics. I've always liked indie comics. I like creators who own their own thing, doing their own thing. Those are the voices, the stories that I respond to.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't buy a lot of mainstream comics, and now that I'm doing an indie comic, really the ones that I really get excited for are people who are doing it at my level, who have a lot of talent, and I want more people to see them. So I like supporting them.
And you have all this control over it. Well, George Peter Gatz is in the chat, wants to know if he can buy all the Miskatonic comics as digital in one purchase. Do you have something like that?
Yep, that's one of the reward levels over at Kickstarter. You can do it is you can buy all of them. And, you know, once the Kickstarter is done, we have an Etsy store where you can just go and you can get them that way too.
Okay, so if they went to, and I've got it right here, if they went to Miskatonic High number 10, link is in the description right below the video here. It takes you right to it. There's a reward level on here. It says get 1 through 9 or 1 through 10 as digital.
Yep. Yeah, we call them the shunned. We call them the shunned issues because, you know, you shunned them this long.
I'm just discovering it, and you know, I love the entire idea of you know, of Lovecraft. I mean, you know, you don't go around with the moniker Randolph Carter all your life and not know about Howard Philip Lovecraft.
Very true. Very true. Well, and you know, we were talking about how we sort of lucked into things. When Ryan and I were kicking around what we were going to do for a series that we wanted to do, you know, we were throwing around superhero ideas, and Ryan was the one. I mean, he's really the mastermind behind this thing. He's like, you know, look, I really like doing horror. I really like doing Lovecraft horror. And I was like, well, I like doing sort of mismatched characters, you know, and I like having fun with these things. And really, we put those two ideas together like a Reese's cup, and it became this thing. And again, you know, and I see this now when I've been doing it so long. I was talking to a friend of mine recently. It's like, you don't see a lot of superhero comics succeeding on Kickstarter. I don't know if you do it on Indiegogo. They're not generally the ones that I look for, but it kind of feels like if you want to read superhero stories, you can get them out there. If you want to read something different, you're probably going to turn to an indie comic. And so we sort of lucked into it because we decided to do a horror comic that was Lovecraft based, but then also had some comedy elements to it as well. That, you know, people on the indie side were hungry for something like that. They like something with a sense of humor. They like something that's horror based. They like something that's Lovecraftian based. And so we really lucked into it that, you know, there was an audience ready for us when we got there.
Yeah. Now, BAP2 in the chat has asked about getting the books in physical. So I was scrolling down while you were talking here. This is the Shunned Issues physical only. This is the print editions of season 1 as a trade paperback.
Yep.
The first 4 issues of season 2 and the 2 issues of the crossover. That's all the way up through issue 9 and the 2 issue crossovers, right? So
right, and you get this. So literally, if you get that, you get everything.
Yeah, the first 4 issues from season 2. That includes number 10. That's right here. So,
right. So our first 6 issues, that's what's in our trade, is the first 6 issues. That's our first arc. And then what happened was, so we've done 7, 8, 9, and now 10 of the second arc. And we're going to finish at 13. So we're about midway through our second season.
Very cool. I'm going to scroll back to the very top here because you have a video. And I'm going to play the video. And then I'm going to tell you that I absolutely know nothing about Miskatonic High. Take me back to issue 1. And what is this all about, and why do I want to get into it? But first, let's check this out. All right, I'm stoked, and I just saw a little brief clip there.
Yeah, but yeah, it really is just a teaser clip to sort of get you interested in the one issue. We've been doing 10 videos now. It's, it's hard to not give away the boat, when you're doing a video of the comic book.
Exactly, and of course that's exactly what I'm going to ask you to do now. Nick Mueller in the chat wants to know how many issues you plan on doing. You've said 13, and you're getting ready to go season 3, which is going to be issue 14. And Insiders, we just keep on chugging until we run out of track.
We are an ongoing series. We have no plans. I mean, we have a broader overarching story that we're working through. And we got a lot of fun twists coming up for that. But one of the things that we found doing this was I sort of came to horror later in my life. I'd read a lot of superheroes. I'd read a lot of comedies, read a lot of other things, and then started getting into horror. And one of the things that I realized from both reading it and doing horror is not really a genre. Horror is just a tone,
Yes. You can do any genre and make it horror.
You can do science fiction in horror. You can do historical in horror. You can do comedy in horror. You can do psychological horror. You can do anything. And that's what we discovered when we were doing this was we set it up differently than a lot of people do now. We do standalone issues. So every issue is one story. It's got the overarching thing going on underneath that's building up towards, the end of our season. But we sort of likened it, we both were fans of X-Files back in the day, and they would have like a monster of the week sort of episode. Right. And then eventually at the end of the season, you would sort of build your mythology to have a big issue like that. That's really sort of the pattern we followed. And so by doing a sort of self-contained story in each issue, we get to do something different each issue. This one, we're exploring dreams and nightmares, and that's a lot of fun. The one before this was a noir story, of a mystery from back in the 1930s that they were trying to solve. The one before that was a trip to Innsmouth, to deal with strange things that should have stayed deeply buried. So what we have found is anything that we want to do, we can do it in this series. Like, if we want to do a science fiction story, we can do a science fiction story here. If we want to do a romance story, we can do a romance story here. We can do anything here. And that's the fun of it. So we have this sort of ongoing story, but we can insert these sort of standalone issues as we go along if we want to do whatever. Like when we were coming up with season 2, it was set. And then I told Ryan in the middle of it, oh, hey, I need to insert a prison story. And he's like, okay. Again, we don't have an editor. We don't have a publisher. We can do whatever we want. Yeah. So we inserted the prison story in it. So now there's a standalone prison story coming up in issue 12.
And you're the second person that I've run into that publishes that calls your arcs seasons. Just like, Buffy or Arrow, you've got all these individual episodes of things happening, but you've got this also, the big bad guy is always out there doing something until you get to that finale.
Right. Right. It's actually something I picked up from Xander Cannon, who does Keiuchi Max for Oni. Anyway, I'm a fan of his, and he calls his arcs seasons, and it's just something that I picked up on and said, that's kind of how we want people to think about it is, this is our season. It goes on for however long it does. It goes on for how many episodes. And then we're going to have maybe a cliffhanger at the end of that season to pick it up to the next season or whatever. We don't necessarily see ourselves as TV. We're not one of those people who are only putting this out so we can try and make a TV show or something out of it, because that's really not what we do. But I like that mentality of thinking, okay, from here to there is going to be like a season of shows. And like if you watch television, sort of what's coming. There's a couple episodes, then something happens, and then a couple episodes, and then you have the big finale. And that's sort of how I think about setting up the stories.
You have a lot of the same tone, and then a very special episode of Blossom tonight. And then,
I deal with high school kids, so everyone is a very special episode.
This is true. Backed at all the copies for the physical issues. Thank you,
Bap, you're great.
Love you, man. Appreciate you being
Thank you
here.
so much.
George is confused. I know, George, it's okay. He's confused a lot, but he was looking for all of them in the digital form, and I don't think the shunned issues was that one.
There's actually two shunned. There's the physical and there's the digital. Just look for the digital one.
I thought I looked for that, and I saw two shuns. I saw a shunned physical.
Yep, physical and digital, and then keep going up. Keep going. Yeah, we don't.
There's physical.
So if you only want the physical, go up just a little bit more. It's got to be there somewhere. Otherwise, I set it up wrong. Keep going.
I'm looking for that. All of Thulu for you. All the color out of your screen.
Yep, there it is. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
yes, I'm sorry. The shunder is only the physical. It's all the color out of your screen. They're all puns off of Lovecraft stories or books. So the color out of space, and so this became all the color out of your screen for the PDF.
George, there's your tier. You want to get that $26 tier. You're going to get it all in digital. So
right, and one of the things that we do, and God bless them, some people have given us credit for, is we really try to keep these things affordable. Like our book, our early bird costs $5 for a comic. We're not trying to milk anybody. It's just the two of us working on it. So we don't need to charge as much as some people do. Sure. And we really try to make it easy for people to get into our book.
I'm liking the aesthetic of it as well. I mean, it's got a very kind of Riverdale look to it.
Yeah, so we get compared to Archie quite a bit, which is kind of fine for me because it's really easy to tell people, hey, we're like Archie meets H.P. Lovecraft. And that people instantly smile at that. And you're like, yep, I got him.
But okay, the last time somebody told me that they had Archie meets H.P. Lovecraft, they left me hanging on a cliffhanger for 6 frickin' years, Mike.
Well, I can guarantee you we won't be leaving you on any cliffhangers for 6 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Damn you, Robert. Aguirre Sacasa.
Yeah. So
for Reggie to kill Betty for 6 years.
So it's funny because I'm old school. So when somebody first told me that we were Archie meets H.P. Lovecraft, I thought they were insulting me. I was like, what are you saying? Like Archie comics like you find at the grocery store? You're being a jerk. And then we sort of started looking at what Archie has been doing, and Archie's been doing some really cool comics for the last, couple of years. And we're like, okay, yeah, you can call us that if you want. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, they started with that Afterlife with Archie, and that was the first. Well, I guess they didn't start with that. They went to the whole realistic kind of look for a while there.
Yeah, they did.
But then they did the whole Afterlife adult sort of thing. I was like, ooh, that's very subversive and cool. And then they never went back to the original Archie, so my son can't read them anymore.
Yeah, and I got into the whole Sabrina thing when it started getting really cool, because we're a very similar vibe to that. We're different because our horror is a little different than theirs are, and it's the nature of Lovecraft horror versus kind of more traditional vampires, witches, zombies, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And the thing about us that I like, and I try to explain to people who don't know Lovecraft, is Lovecraft is a very certain kind of horror. There's no angels, there's no demons, there's no morality to it. It is, and there's all of these things from the world and the universe that we don't understand. These giant monsters, tentacle things living in the ocean, and they just want to eat us. And they're kind of like the shark from Jaws. There's no morality to it. They're not good or bad because they want to eat us. They just happen to want to eat us. Humanity is nothing to them. And, that was kind of a description of high school for me. So it kind of worked perfectly.
Yeah, that works. So look, I scrolled all the way up to the top. I need to start going down now. So among your cast of characters, and I'm assuming they're recurring characters, and it's not just, a different class every season or something. Do we have provenance to the Lovecraft? I mean, do we have the it's modern day. It looks like it's concurrent with
So it is modern day. We do have some flashbacks to sort of more Lovecraftian periods. I'm gonna deep dive it for anybody who's a Lovecraft fan. In the case of Charles Dexter Ward, there's a reference to the Salem witch trials, and so I saw that. Miskatonic for me. So Miskatonic, it comes from Miskatonic University. That's what Lovecraft called his university.
Right.
Miskatonic is actually a derivative of Housatonic, which is a river in Western Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. And so that really struck me. Like when I read that, like, oh, he's talking about the Housatonic. It's the river. It's, out in Western Massachusetts, out where he's set like Dunwich Horror and a lot of that stuff out in sort of Western New England, rural New England. And that's where my family's from. So I was like, I understand exactly where he's talking about. I understand exactly who he's talking about. And it's something that I really wanted to write about. Like, it's like my sort of hometown. And it's a weird hometown because it's the Berkshires in Massachusetts. So you get these real rural folks who work out there, really blue collar working folks. And then you have these New York yuppies that come in and check out the foliage and the maple syrup. And then because it's the Berkshires, you have these weird leftover 60s hippies who never left. And so it's this really weird collection of people. And then you apply horror on top of it. And I thought, this is going to be so much fun to write. And so it's a private school out there of these sort of rich kids and these rural kids, and the kids of the hippies, and they're all sort of in the school together, and strange things start happening. And the way I sort of tie it back to Lovecraft is Lovecraft really liked to share his ideas. He liked to share his world. He had no problem putting it out there and letting other writers play with it and do whatever they want with it. And, he had his mythos, but then the other writers would come in and they would do their own thing and new things, and they would add to the mythos. So what we are kind of doing is taking some of his ideas that we really like and sort of running at them in a new direction. I'm going to spoil one, unfortunately, but it's a good one. So he wrote a story called The Lurking Fear. It was about this guy who goes out and is looking for this missing family from this sort of burnt out shell of a house, and they weren't there. And it seemed like they'd been dragged away. And so he ends up getting dragged underground and finds out that the family devolved into sort of these rat people that sort of were, anyway, it's great Lovecraft stuff. And so one of the things that I thought about when we were putting this together was, wouldn't it be cool if one of our characters had a family that was devolving into rat things? Maybe it's one of our rural characters, and, she's already being made fun of by all the rich snobby kids. And, they probably call her inbred or what hick or whatever. And what if, there is some sort of devolving going on there, and she's already being made fun of, and she's got that to look forward to in her future. Like, that's some really twisted stuff right there. And I don't know about you or other writers, but when I come across twisted stuff, I just get a big smile, and I'm like, yep, yeah, I'm onto something.
You got to twist it a little more.
Right. So what we do is, like, people who really follow Lovecraft will see where we get our ideas and where we're going, sort of taking those ideas. But we're also perfectly good with people who've never read it. Like, we don't say, oh, you have to have read this in order to understand what's going on here. We really make it so that you can just come in cold and pick it up and know that there's weird things. Like, yeah. I have one lady who reads the book and reviews on it, and she read number 10, and kind of a big bad appears in number 10, and she thought he was really cool. So then she went to find out more about him online and from books and things like that. So in some ways, we're kind of inspiring other people to sort of find these things because of what's going on in the comic.
And if you do know your Lovecraft and you find something that's deep lore, then it's a happy Easter egg. You don't have to have it to understand it.
Right, exactly.
I've got several questions here. I'm trying to not forget any of them. So if I rattle on, it's because I don't want them to slip away.
Okay.
First of all, I want to know, are any of the students legacies. I mean, do we have any Randolph Carters? Do we have any Herbert Wests?
We have a marsh, if you know the Innsmouth story.
I
Shadow
don't know.
over Innsmouth. Okay, yeah. So there's Shadow over Innsmouth is my favorite of the Lovecraft stories, and so it's about this family that sort of made a deal with kind of some deep underwater creatures that they probably shouldn't have, and ended up bringing them back to New England. And so the family in it is called the Marshes, and so we have a Marsh character who figured predominantly for quite some time.
All right. Secondly, you know, obviously you took the Miskatonic University and turned it into Miskatonic High. You're not, you know, the first person to take a Lovecraft item and rename it and put it into your own universe.
Right.
Which one of the more famous Lovecraftian sites is more famous outside of Lovecraft, I think, than it is inside of Lovecraft, and that is Arkham Asylum.
Of course.
Is there any way that you even get the chance to slip that in without DC lawyers knocking on your door?
Well, not only do we have to worry about DC lawyers, we have to worry about the Call of Cthulhu game suing us as well. We sometimes reference other things that, you know, are good little things that, if any lawyers are listening, are covered under parody clauses. So we're okay.
Good.
Yep.
Good. And then the last of the three questions that we're swirling up, I'm going to have more. We're going to
It's okay.
I
have all night, so I don't know what you're doing.
Cool. Yeah, I've got nothing. Nowhere to whenever people say, you know, hey, I'm doing something that's Lovecraft, the very first thing that pops into head, Cthulhu. And of course, you know, you've got the aquatic octopi arm stretching across in the logo here. How much does that one specific elder god come into play here? Because of all the Lovecraft stuff, I think Cthulhu is the most overused thing. It's probably the only thing that some people know.
Right. And, you know, I got to tell you, we don't have any plans for him in the near future. So one of the things that we talked about, because we talked about this a lot before we ever started writing our first issue, was, okay, if 5 teenage kids ran into anything from a Lovecraft story, they're probably going to get eaten. Yes. You know, they probably aren't, you know, brandishing guns. They probably aren't pulling out, you know, razor-tipped bats and beating up on these things. They're probably running away fast because, you know, frankly, if I ran into one of those things, I would be running away fast. So our idea was always try and keep this somewhat plausible, you know, that these aren't going to be super-powered kids. They're not going to be, you know, kids who, you know, can turn into a stone or whatever. And, you know, we didn't want to go that route. We wanted it to be more fun than that, you know, it's not really horror if you're not scared for what could happen. And so, you know, some of the kids die, some of the kids go insane, some of the kids, you know, don't make it back with all their limbs. You know, this stuff happens, and it happens in our story, so that you never get completely sure of what's going to happen. And our feeling was, if they ran into Cthulhu, you know, the guy is the size of, you know, a small building. What are they going to do to him? You know, bore him with ideas about social media. You know, it's, you know, so we didn't want to go there. We, you know, we prefer to keep our horror sort of more on the intimate and psychological level, you know, because to really scare and really sort of embrace the idea of these are high school kids who are dealing with monsters, and then they also deal with slimy ones. You know,
and they're dealing with real horror monsters. This isn't the Scooby gang, and you know, the rubber mask comes off of a guy at the end of each episode.
Right. And we wanted to mix that. So we don't want it to just be, oh, okay, I can't wait for the monster to turn up. You know, we have, again, like, to go back to that, we have one girl who's, you know, picked upon in school. You know, she's really bullied and really done that. And if you went to her and said, which is worse, the monsters you deal with or, you know, the cheerleaders, she would really have to think about that for a while. You know, and that's something that really appealed to me, was the idea of getting into how high school wasn't fun for people. That it really was a kind of horror show in and of itself. And then to layer monsters on top of that, I just thought was really interesting and a good combination to put together.
Now, this cover that we've been holding up here for a while, I'm getting, and I know we're talking, it's all about Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting a very strong Carol off of it.
As well you should. So it's very much based, this story is very much based upon the dream quest of Outer Kadath.
Kadath.
Yep. And so we explored that quite a bit. And then, he was inspired by other people when he was writing that. He was really inspired by the Wizard of Oz series that was going on. That really, triggered something in him for what he was writing. And he was really inspired by those other classics, adventure stories about traveling to a different world. And so, we sort of homage that in this. At one point, Alex, who is the girl who's following, she's training to in magic, and so she references it. This is like, I thought it was the astral plane from Doctor Who or Doctor Strange, and or the Slumberland from Nemo, and yeah, and so like the gods who are there in the Dreamlands just make fun of her for saying stuff like that. It's like Doctor Strange, Doctor Who, and so we have fun with it.
Very cool. So you've got a lot of tiers here, and I'm guessing the more issues you get, the more tiers you've got to get to allow people to get to the back issues. What kind of things do we have here other than the book? I mean, here's $20 for just the trade. Now this is just the first trade paperback. That's not even this issue here. Let me scroll back up here because we're missing everything. By the way, do you have any distribution outside of Kickstarter, or is it just it's all Kickstarter? Do you go through Diamond afterwards and say retailers show up and buy?
We haven't yet. We haven't had much luck with that. We talk to some publishers, and when we talk to publishers, they generally want a part of your IP, or they generally want to say, yeah, we'll publish you. And you say, well, what are you going to do to get me into stores? And they said, stores. Yeah, you're funny. So, we are really at a level where we're just trying to put this out on a regular basis. We are not any superstars. We're not any names nobody's going to recognize. We're not a flash in the pan that's going to hit really heavy. The way that we're going to turn into a success is by doing this one at a time for longer than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's something that we think we can do. And the more that we do, the deeper the story gets, the deeper the characters get, the deeper the people who really like it. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep on doing it. We're going to keep on doing this because we're really lucky that the backers continue to support us the way that they do and allow us to do this. And we're really grateful for that. And, we're going to have fun with it. And eventually we would love to get to work with retailers. We'd happy to send them some so that they can sell them. We're happy to sell it on consignment. I don't really care. Our thing is we just want to sell it.
Yeah, that's what we kind of are starting to do here because Critical Blast has more tendrils than Thulu himself. But we're doing a distribution thing with initially started with the overseas crowdfunders because it costs an arm and a leg to buy a book from overseas.
Yeah.
So we set up a distribution channel where it's like, okay, you crowdfund, and everybody you sell to the U.S., you send it to us in one box, and then we'll break it apart and we'll distribute it at domestic shipping prices. And now nobody's turning away your Kickstarter or your Indiegogo because it costs too much. It's going to cost the same.
Yeah. But we were actually talking about with a friend of ours who does the book over in England about just doing that on a micro level. We would do his and he would do ours, and we never really got anywhere. But yeah, I get the idea.
Another way to do it. Well, the upshot of it was I'm telling them, say, hey, when you ship to us, overship because first of all, safety stock. Second of all, you're going to go in demand. So don't send us anymore. But third of all, when I've got a couple of titles, that's when I'm going to say, hello, local comic shops around the U.S. I have low print run, in demand, import hard to get comics here. That you can now get a la carte, and you don't have to pay shipping $10 for that one, $10 for this one. I'll put them all in one box, and I'll like a mini diamond.
Right. And I don't know if you found this, but I have certainly found, thanks to crowdfunding comics, comics isn't like a domestic industry anymore. When I was growing up, you only saw American comics, and if you were lucky, you saw maybe one or two Japanese, and maybe Mobius from over in France, and that was it. You really didn't get a whole lot of foreign comics, and now you can get all the foreign comics you want, and we sell this. We sell a bunch to England. We sell a lot to Scandinavian countries for some reason. It's like they really dig the horror that we do, and they also really like our sarcastic sense of humor, which is kind of perfect. So we're ready to go over to Finland.
A lot of people are finding printers in the other countries and say, we'll print from there and distribute from there, and that gets the shipping down,
Right.
which is perfectly acceptable. I can't say that, it obviously it hurts our model, but our
Right.
model is more for the people, well, yeah, you can have your book printed in the other country, but you can't do anything like sign it or put your trading cards in it or your stickers or whatever.
Right. And what we found is, the backers who really get into your story, they don't just want to love the book. They want to love everything about it. They want to love, they want a little keychain to be able to show people. They want, we do a special thing for anybody whose name we put in our comics to say thank you. We send them a little thank you gift with their name on it, so they get a personalized thing from us.
Wow.
Yeah, so for this one, we're doing a special one. We did a little card set of 9 cards that Ryan drew and put together. It looks great. And then on the back is a little fighting game that you can play. So we had a lot of fun with it. And so what we're doing is, on the 10th card is going to be the rules, and it's going to be your name and say thank you for supporting us. So you're getting something specifically just saying thank you, because look, I know that a lot of people say this, but it is absolutely true. These comics do not exist without the backers. They do not exist. We are not doing this comic. After we had made our 6 issues, we were out of money. We weren't doing an issue 7, or if we were doing an issue 7, we weren't doing it in color. It wasn't feasible for us. And when the comic and supported us, that's how we're able to continue doing these comics. So we are eternally grateful to our backers for coming, because it really is. It's their comic. They have pushed us this far.
Yeah, and here's the other thing I would point out about that: this being backer funded, you're increasing in numbers. You're increasing every month. The last one I'm seeing 571 backers. I don't know how many issues that is. One backer could have bought 30 copies. I'm just going with the numbers I can actually count.
Sure.
But at that print run, Diamond would have told you at issue 3, we're not carrying you anymore.
Right.
And there'd have been nothing you could do about it.
Right. There's absolutely nothing we can do about it. And, here's the thing that I think about. And again, it goes back to how old I am. I think back to like Love and Rockets. I think back to Cerberus and some of them. These are comics that they did it locally because they had to. They were selling it at their local cons. They were doing it locally in the LA scene. They were getting it out any way that they could. And no, Diamond wasn't supporting them back then. Diamond doesn't support them now. They did it that way because that's the way they did it. We are lucky that we have crowdfunded comics, but it's the same idea. Back in the 80s, there were plenty of independent comics that lasted 1 or 2 issues and disappeared. I lived through the 90s. I can tell you there were a lot of comics that came out with 1 issue. It's not that different from today. But the ones that are really good, the ones that have the drive to continue, are the ones that we're still talking about today.
Yeah, and some of them are still being published. Like I think Cerberus is still ongoing.
I'm not sure. I think he hit issue 300, and I think he stopped. Love and Rockets, I know, is still going on, though.
Okay. It's amazing stuff. Turtles.
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's a humongous one. I was a Usagi Yojimbo fan as a young kid, and that thing is still going on, and his artwork is beautiful. He's turned that into a cottage industry.
Yeah, he definitely has. So we got the tiers here. I got sidetracked there. $3 for the digital of this one. That's insane, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's too much. I would lower it if I could. To be perfectly honest, I'm not. look, I will tell you, there are certain expenses that are required to make a comic, even one as small as ours. And we are a very small comic. There are two people who work on this comic. We both own it. He does the art. I do the writing. I do the lettering. I do the fulfillment and the Kickstarters. I do the marketing, all of that stuff. And the thing is, because it's just the two of us, it allows us to be more guerrilla. We can afford to charge less for our comic, to really, we're not looking to make money. We're looking to put it in people's hands and have them enjoy it. And that's what we're going to do. Again, I wish I could charge less, but I got to make enough to at least we can put out the next issue.
Now, how you said these are little comics? How little or big are these comics? We haven't talked about the physicality of an issue.
So it's 24 pages. It's full color. Generally, we are adding to the page count, usually through our stretch goals and things like that. Generally we add a trading card because we did one and people loved them. So now we do trading cards pretty much as our standard stretch goal. We also do a 4-page behind the scenes, give them sketches, talk about how we came at this issue, some of the challenges of writing it, that sort of thing. And, I kind of liken it to Patreon. This is sort of our version of Patreon. We really appreciate the backers who come every 2 months and back us. And so I want to give you as much access as I can, to the things that you love about it. And so, we do little merchandise. We do keychains. And right now we're doing acrylic standees because I think they're cool and they don't cost an arm and a leg like figurines.
I saw that was down here. By the way, if you're looking, the guy who just backed you at the $26 level is the guy I send everybody to for 3D printed figurines.
Okay.
That cost for people. So if you're interested in getting that, I will hook you two up.
Please do, because we just did one that, it cost a lot more than I was expecting.
Yeah, he'll tell you the cost up front, and then you just kind of build that into your tier. But
right.
He's basically charging you for the plastic pellets.
Right.
I'm not going to give his quotes because I don't know his quotes.
But,
a lot of people sent to him, and some of them are actual in the store publisher people now are going to him for some stuff. So he does great work. He's doing a 2-foot long spaceship for his own his own campaign book that he does. And I'm like, yeah, sign me up for one of those. That thing is freaking awesome.
Well, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people find about, indie comics, the crowdfunded comics, is very quickly you can tell the people who are passionate about the things they do and are doing it because they want to do the things they do, not because they're trying to. I have met these people. They are out there who are putting out a comic because they want it to be a Netflix show. They're not doing it because they want to do a comic. They're not doing it for whatever reason. And, God love them. If that's what you want to do, more power to you. That's not why we're here. We love comics. We're old guys. We love comics. We lived comics for 30 plus years. And this is what we've always wanted to do. And now we're doing it. We have lucked our way into finding a sustainable platform that we can do it on. And we are going to do it as best we can for as long as we can, because it's, pardon my French, it's fucking fun.
When did you get into comics, Mike?
I got into comics, 3rd grade, which was 1984 for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a Robotech kid. So Robotech was a thing. It was the first Japanese animated thing that sort of really hit the mainstream over in the US. And Comico, this little indie comic company, put out comic book issues based upon the episodes. And I saw one in the store and I had seen the show and I was like, I need that. And I got it and it was just like the thing, but it was better because you could see the art. It's like it wasn't moving. It's like I could sit there and stare at these giant robots for long periods of time. And it was cool to me. And then I started hanging out at this a used bookstore. And they had one of those, big drawers that you could pull out, and any comic in there was 10 cents. And I found everything in there. And the thing about it, those things, is you are going through so much weird crap when you do that. And it's wonderful. But, a lot of it was, even at that point, was indie comics for me. It's like, I remember that's how I found Zot by Scott McCloud before he did Understanding Comics.
Yeah.
And I love Zot. Zot was one of my favorites. And I'm trying to think what else that I found in there. I found Dreadstar from Jim Starlin in there. And, you know, probably because they weren't X-Men, people had just thrown them away. And so they ended up in these 10-cent bins. And the thing about it is the storytelling was so good that I hooked on it really early. And so for a long time I was getting, you know, the Marvel X-Men and Spider-Man and all that, but I was also digging through and finding these indie books that I liked. And, you know, that's something that's been with me forever.
I got a ton of those indie books in college and just discovered new things. You know, X Mutants, the New Humans.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, I was lucky because I grew up in a town with no comic shop and no comics being sold at the drugstore.
Right.
But that was okay because it was 1971 and I lived in Sparta, Illinois. and that's where World Color Press was. Every single comic book in the world was printed there. People just brought home the print overruns and put them in their yard sales or gave them away.
Wow.
So yeah, I was a DC kid. I was reading. I was reading before kindergarten because I was reading Superman comics that my barber would give me after I would get my hair cut. I would, you know, I didn't want to let go of the comic book that I was reading there in his wing area, so he let me take it home. It wasn't until first grade that people knew I knew how to read. I just assumed everybody could.
Well, and the weird thing is, back when we were kids, you know, if you saw a kid reading a comic book, it was like, take that comic book away, get him a real book. Yeah. And now I have kids, and it's like, I can't get enough comic books in my kids' hands. I love that they love reading them, you know. And to be perfectly honest, I read a lot of the Scholastic books now because that's what we get from the library for my kids.
I get a ton
and you know, so we read the Smile books. We read. I'm reading Cleopatra in Space now. I read Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. And the thing about it is those all-age books are so freaking good. Yeah, exactly. My son loves the I Survived book. I think he actually read that one last night. Yeah, that one. Yep, the Nazi invasion. Yep, he read that one last night.
And then this one just recently came out, Allergic.
How is it?
It's a little simple and sweet.
Sure. My daughter, she's reading the Babysitter Club ones that are coming out now. So yeah, so I'm right there with you. And the thing about it is, so I pay attention to sort of what's going on in the market, and I know a lot of people do. But if you look at it, DC is kind of going a bad way. You're not quite sure what's going to happen to them. And if you look at who owns the market, Scholastic owns 40% of the market.
Yeah, they do.
Because they have access to kids. They put out all ages tales, and both parents and kids and just adults and teenagers and all these people, they read these books. And, you know, if you look on the inside, it's copyright by the person who wrote it. It's not copyright DC. It's not copyright Marvel. These are people who are writing their books the way they want to. They're being published in a smart way. They're being put in the hands of an audience who really wants to read them. That's all ages. Remember when Superman was all ages?
Yeah.
Remember when Batman was all ages?
And by all ages, let's be clear about that. We're not saying it was all ages like Teeny Titans was all ages. No. This was, you know, my dad read the Jonah Hex comic book, laid it on the coffee table, and didn't care if I picked it up and read it because anybody could read it.
Right, because you know, when I was reading, you know, Superman or Batman, I didn't have to worry that it was like, you know, David Fincher's Seven, you know. And now when I put a Batman book down, I got to be careful that, you know, my son doesn't pick it up for another, you know, 6 months. But you know, that's something that we've sort of started leaning into. So our comic, you know, I thought we were writing a teenage adult book. And then I started getting these emails from backers who said, I'm giving this to my kid, and my kid loves it. He wants your next book. He can't wait to get the next book. You're his favorite writer. You're his favorite art team. It's like, yeah, I'm cool with that. I want to be a comic that parents can read with their kids if they want to, or give to their kids. But we're not dumb. You know, it's not everything ends with a happy ending.
Yeah.
This is the kind of book that kids like because it's not pandering to them.
Do you feel any kind of the weight of responsibility hearing something like that and knowing that you're still producing? It's not like it's like this is something I made and kids love it. This is something I'm making and kids love it now, and I have to be mindful of that going forward.
I'm not going to lie. I have thought about that, but one of the things that I embraced when I started doing this comic, and I think Ryan did as well, we call our comics, we have a brand, even though we don't use it very much, called Danger Dads, because that's who we are. We're both dads. We both have kids. We both have fun. We both sort of did comics early on in life, but didn't get very far, and then sort of stopped for having families and having jobs, and have recently come back to it. And we're both sort of embracing this opportunity to really do it. But we're doing comics that we want our kids to be proud of. Again, it's not wholesome tales. This isn't Little House on the Prairie. This is things where, kids are bullied, kids are called names. They run into adults who don't believe them and don't listen to them and don't care what's going on with them. These they feel like true stories to me, but I'm writing them specifically because I want my kids to learn the lessons that I learned. That when you find someone who appreciates you for who you are, all the baggage you bring with you, all the terrible things that you have going on in your life, and will stand and have your back, that's somebody that you keep for the rest of your life and do whatever you need to do to keep them as your friend. And those are the real life lessons that we try to put in there that don't pander to people and don't, we're not going to write down to it because we think there's a 10-year-old reading this. We're going to write it the way we want to write it. And we hope that 10-year-olds pick up on what's the truth of it.
Yeah, the Brothers Grimm didn't hold anything back.
No, they did
not.
Much
known for writing for children. So
right. Yeah. Brothers Grimm and Disney are kind of two different versions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They are. You start these things with like a $300 goal. I don't know what your last one closed out at. I could have looked at that, but I wasn't worried about dollars. I was looking about continuation.
Yeah.
You're almost at 11,000. You're $1 away from 11,005 with a $300 initial goal. Do you ever look at that and say, the next book we should, maybe aim a little higher, or you're just like, we just get it out there. We're going to do it anyway.
That's kind of twofold. So one is it's kind of our good luck charm. We did our first one. We had the story done. We print on demand. So the moment somebody orders the book, we know how, we've already made a little, 5-cent profit on it, because we've already got the shipping and the print on demand covered. So we could print 15 copies and we're doing fine. So we really thought, okay, we'll keep a low goal. We'll just try and get this out there. Again, when we did the first one, we thought 15 people were going to show up. We thought maybe $500. So 300 will seem like a kind of ambitious goal. And then when it blew away, it's kind of like become our good luck charm that we'll just keep starting at 300 and people will just keep doing it. But it really does sort of harken back to what you were saying. We're going to print these comics if 2 people back us. I can guarantee you these books are going to come out. I can guarantee you I'm going to ship these books. I can guarantee you you're going to have these books. And I want people to feel like that from the very, very beginning.
I've determined that I'm never going to get down to the bottom tier on this one, jump down to it. And I can't even, you're going old school elder gods with this stuff here. So.
Yeah. So that's kind of a funny story. If you scroll down the main thing, a kind of a far down way, you will find some really crazy pictures, and you will know them when you get there.
Oh my God, that's gorgeous! I got to stop there. Is this the same artist on everything?
Nope. So every month we get 2 indie artists that we like who are doing other series, and we ask them if they would do a cover for us, a variant cover for us. And so this is a guy named Ian Ashcroft. He's over in England, and he does just this beautiful, beautiful art. And I came across him on Instagram, and I begged him to do an issue for us, and he said, yeah. And so, we get a new one every month, and, we basically turn the cover over to them and say, here's the issue. Do whatever inspires you on the cover. Because I know if you're inspired, you're going to do better than if I tell you what I want for a variant cover.
Yeah.
And so they did.
Yeah, the variant cover.
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah. She's over in Spain, and she does historical art, and her artwork is beautiful. I love her.
Okay, so when you do the trade paperbacks, you reprint all the covers in these things, right?
Yeah. So again, I go old school. I like the cover gallery at the end.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah. We put them all in. That's the deal. Is the artwork belongs to the artist. We're not going to claim ownership over it. They can do whatever they want with it afterwards, as long as they just let us reprint it in the trade.
I know somebody who needs to hear
that. Yeah, well, I can think of a few people who need to hear that. But, again, I work with Ryan. Ryan is my co-creator on this. We have a hell of a good time putting this thing out. But I come across so many wonderful creators who are putting out great comics that I wish more people would check out. And I can't do series with them because I don't have the time or the effort or the energy to do that. But what I can do is I can offer them a variant cover and some money and say, please do a cover for me. And I will let you do whatever you want on that cover. I want you to be involved in this somehow. I want to say that you did something in this universe. And people respond, and so it's always great because you let them do whatever they want to do. And when you let an artist do whatever they want to do and they don't feel like you own them, they produce good stuff.
You take the shackles off. Now this is that standee, the acrylic standee. I've seen some other people do this. Timothy Lim does this with his Common America.
Yeah. So the one thing that I really like about these is if you do enough of them, they're inexpensive enough that I'm not going to bankrupt my backers who want to get a whole set. I can do 6 of them and it's not going to cost $300.
I don't know where you get yours done at, but have you ever heard of Sticker Mule?
Oh yeah, we do Sticker Mule for all our stickers and all our magnets because we do those. Yeah, they do those. I personally prefer like an enamel pin, but I think those acrylic pins are awesome.
I would love an enamel pin of these things, but I've ordered enamel pins for organizations I've worked for, and I was like, I'm glad the company's paying for these and not me.
Right. So here's the thing that I found, again, from doing this is issue number 10, but we've actually done this is our 13th Kickstarter, is if you can find a way to get it in enough rewards that that you're going to do 50 or 100 of them, the price comes way down that we can actually afford to do them. It's when you're only doing, 7 or 8 of them, when you're not doing that, the price just doesn't work.
And then, of course, you can order once you're ordering 500 of them, you might as well order 1,500 of them.
Well, and here's the thing. So again, we've fallen down that trap of you think something's going to be really popular, and that you need 500, and you think, okay, I'm going to order 1,500 because I'll sell them eventually, and then you have 500 of them sitting in your basement for the next 3 years. Yes. It's like I could have gone that way, or I could have used that money towards something else instead, and kicked myself later for having to spend it twice. But
I'm thinking when I get stuff like this, I'm thinking old school. The pre-plague years when we used to have conventions.
Oh, tell me more. I don't remember that.
Yeah, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But but again, it goes back to sort of the idea that when when you're doing comics like we do, people respond. Like, they know that we're 2 guys plugging away at this, trying to put this out in a way that's not costing them an arm and a leg. And they fall in love with it for whatever reason that they do, whether it's the characters, whether it's the story, whether it's the humor, whether it's just the fact that they know that they are making this thing a reality and they want to show it off. They want the little things to show it off, whether it's the enamel pins or whether it's the standees. They want to show off their love for these things. And, God bless them. I want to help them do it. So, yeah. Too many creators do that on their very first issue because they want to put as much out there as possible. I'm like, if I was doing a comic right now, and it would be issue 1 because I've done nothing before, the only thing I would ever put out would be like a die cut sticker of the title.
Yeah.
Advertise the title, get that out there. Because right now, nobody knows your character to love your character to put them on a T-shirt or a standee. You're right. You can do anything now.
Right. And, I find that sort of mentality is kind of a problem for a lot of people. The thing is, okay, you are making this comic. You have probably been thinking about it for a year, maybe more. You know the characters inside and out. You know where it's going. You know the really cool thing that's going to happen in issue 12. You know all the things that are going to happen. You know the lovable sidekick that so and so is going to get later. You know all that. So by the time you put out that first issue, you're ready for the t-shirt because you know these characters and you know this brand and you love it. And you think, well, of course, readers and backers are going to respond to that. And readers and backers are like, what? I don't even understand what this is. And the thing that I find that creators struggle with, which kind of surprises me sometimes, is the marketing. I look at a lot of Kickstarters, mainly because I like to back Kickstarters. I like to, when you have some level of success, I think you have an obligation to help propagate that with other people.
Sure.
To really be a part of a community.
Yeah, and that's something I see on Indiegogo a lot, Mike. Is it's can you imagine 1967 and Stan Lee calls up Julius Schwartz and says, "Hey, I'm having a little distribution model here, and we don't know where to take this story. What's in your experience? Have you ever encountered this before? Help me out." That would have been the fastest phone slam down at all.
Right.
But this is a different model now. It's like everybody wants to help everybody else out. And
really what I found is the comics community, the indie comics community, when we sort of stumbled our way into it, again, I don't know where you've been, but I come at it from, I was reading comics as a kid in the 80s and 90s before it became cool. And so we were labeled geeks, we were labeled losers, we were labeled all these things. And so I spent my whole life thinking, I can't tell people that I'm into comics because that's not really all that cool. And so finding an indie comics community and people having the same experience and having the same dreams and wanting to do the same things and being open to telling you about their experiences, both good and bad, the times that they failed on Kickstarter or failed on Indiegogo and their first campaign didn't reach its goal or whatever. People are so open. I'm not a religious guy, but it kind of felt like going to church. It's like, this is my community. These are my people. This is where I want to be. And I want to be a good member of this. I want to help people out wherever I can help them out. I want to back whoever I can back because I like reading comics like this. And one of the things that I found is with a lot of these comics creators, there's not always a lot of confidence. The people make really, really good comics and they're afraid to crowdfund them, or they're afraid to put them out, or they're afraid to market them because they don't want to be that person who's demanding a lot of attention. And I understand that mentality completely, but I want to be your cheerleader then. I want to be the one who say, this is a really good book. There's a book called Natalie Unseen. It's a psychological horror one. It's not crowdfunded. She only does it through Patreon, and I love it. It's a Korean folk tale mixed with a Vertigo psychic investigation. It's so good. I love it. And the only way I got it is because I saw her on Instagram or Twitter and started talking to her, and she said, "Hey, I do this and I have a Patreon." I'm like, sign me up. I'm there. I want to read this. And I love talking about it. I'm one of those people. I would rather talk about other comics than ours because I love it so much. I love these comics that are doing it out there. And again, sort of going back to what we were talking about, people need the confidence and they need the marketing. Yeah. Marketing is a really hard skill because, again, you've spent a year creating this comic. You're going to put it out there and you think people are going to love it. You're going to say, oh, it's a space story set with space raccoons on, Mars, and they are dealing with the Xenodas and this and that. And you're like, dude, back up. Stop being in your head. Be in my head for a moment. I don't know anything about your comic. What's your log line? And if you don't have the log line, don't be crowdfunding your comics yet.
Right.
Really figure that out. And when we spent a week or two just trying to come up with our log line. And our log line, and I'm not saying that it's great by any stretch of the imagination, but we thought it was cool. We thought it was a hook. Ours is, 5 teens are taking on Lovecraft monsters and they're small town high school and they're not sure which is worse. That's it. And people understand that immediately. They know what the book is. They know it's got that wry sense of humor. They know that it's got Lovecraft horror. They know that it's got high school kids, and they're going to see the art so they know what it looks like. People, really work on your marketing. Tell me, who knows nothing about your comic, why I want to read your comic, not why you want me to read your comic.
And find where your market is. And you talk about people who don't want to get out there and do it. They stick with their Patreon or whatever. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a healthy amount of ego to push this. Peter David said something years ago, and it just kind of stuck with me. He's like, and it's about ego. He says you have to have ego if you're a writer. Everyone talks about ego like it's a bad thing. He's like, I write things that I think are good enough and important enough that you should pay me money for the privilege of reading them. Right. You can't do that without ego of some level.
Right. And, it's weird because you're operating sort of in a vacuum. It's like, I write stories and I send them to Ryan. Ryan is my editor. He reads them. He tells me what works, what doesn't. And I accept what he says as fact because I don't know. I'm too much in my own head. Sure. And so I take what he says as fact. I change it. He's got a really good take on it. And so I know when he says it's good, it's good. So you got to have that trust in what you're doing. It's not an easy thing to do. I will tell you this, even as someone who, we have had some level of success at this. Every issue, I start off thinking this is the worst issue of any comic that's ever been written in the entire world. And, not just any comic, I can point to a lot of 90s comics that this is worse than, and you got to find the things that you like about it. And you got to find the things that you're going to champion so that when it comes out, you can say, look, we worked on this a long time. I know this works. I know this is funny. I know that this character is really good. I know you're really going to like this moment at the end.
I've scrolled past a couple of covers here. This looks like a wraparound cover.
It is. So Ryan does a wraparound cover, and it's actually 3 panels. This is 2 panels here. Oh. The third panel is in a mystery. We have a mystery bag of an exclusive variant, as well as a couple trading cards, couple magnets, and a sticker that we stick in our mystery bag, and you don't know what it's going to look like. And if you look over there where she's looking off to her left, where those tentacles are coming from, there is something happening there that's on another cover that you're not going to see unless you get that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's clever marketing to make you buy a tier. And then this is the Ancient Tome edition.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that happened early on for us was I'm not a humongous fan of variant covers, and especially coming from where I came from, I didn't think about it. And so when we started doing it, we wanted to give people some sort of other content. So it wasn't just a cover. And so we did a noir issue where it was all done in line art, black and white, because we're a horror comic and black and white is cool. And we do an Ancient Tome where we reprint an H.P. Lovecraft story that sort of references the story that it's in our comic in some way or other. And then we have a very cool artist by the name of Geist who works over in England, and he does spot illustrations for that story inside the comic. So you get the regular issue story, and then behind it, you get the H.P. Lovecraft story with spot illustrations in it. Oh. So we really wanted to give people that if they were going to buy a variant, we wanted to give them more where we could so that they would get something. Like the mystery bag one, we also include samples of our scripts so that they can see sort of where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, we really wanted to give them more content. Again, it's kind of that Patreon idea of, we want to give you as much as we possibly can because we appreciate you, supporting us.
So the Ancient Tome edition's not just a new cover; it's more
Right.
pages and more content.
Right. Usually it's like 8 or 12 more pages, and it's an H.P. Lovecraft story. And there's a good number of people who read us who haven't read Lovecraft, and it's kind of a great introduction for them. And for a couple of spot illustrations in there, really to bring it to life and really whet their appetite. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
so here's where we start getting into the really cool stuff.
So what am I
So
looking at here?
so we were approached from our first issue. This guy contacted me on email and said, look, I did this drawing, and he showed it to me, and it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. And I at this point I'm running out of money. I don't think we're going to do anything. This is when we had put issue 1 up on our website, and we're selling it for $2 for a PDF, and we had sold 1 copy to this guy. And he sent me something, and I was like, great. And then we started doing the Kickstarters, and he came back and he showed it to me. And if you scroll down just a little bit, look at the level of detail of this. It is absolutely insane, but it is so horrifyingly beautiful.
You must have green thick glasses.
Yeah. Believe me, when you get this thing in person, you just stare at it for minutes on end because there's so much detail in there. And so he's a guy. His name is Venian. He was a black metal musician for a band called Vaughn, and he eats, breathes, sleeps Lovecraft. And he's, he hates it when I say this, but he's actually the nicest guy I know. But he does his art, and it's insane. And what I love about it is, for people who are really into Lovecraft and really into horror, this is what really gets them going. It's something that is so alien looking and weird and beautiful and twisted and detail driven, and it's just gorgeous when you see it in person. And he started coming on, and what he does is he turns our comics into black and white and like old pulpy paper, and really makes it feel like something from the 1920s. And then he puts on these great beautiful covers that are like really kind of twisted and weird, and it feels like a Weird Tales old Lovecraft story. And so yeah, we do a variant that way for people who really want it. And he absolutely refuses to do like more than like 25 of these issues ever, and he signs them and he numbers them, and he's like, no, I'm never reprinting this. I'm like, come on, you got to reprint it, we got to sell more. And he's like, no, I'm not doing it. These are collector's issues, these are what I do, this is my art, and I want people to appreciate it. And I'm like, if you're going to do art like that, I can get on board with that.
You've got to at least collect them all in a coffee table book at some point.
So we have, when we do the end of the season, when we collect it into a trade paperback and a hardcover, he does a special version of it where it's got all of his art. And we are doing a backup story in those ones that I wrote, and he's doing spot illustrations for. And so we're going to combine that story and have that be in the one at the end of the season. Yep.
Now these are all the Lovecraft creatures, although I want to say that my mouse button doesn't scroll very fast. This one here, it looks like he's got your high school character, Alex.
I know.
Here.
It does look like that, doesn't it? So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely based upon what's going on in our story, but he really pulls the visuals from the back in the day, from what he thinks Lovecraft visuals look like. And when he does things like this, I'm not going to tell him no. So there's the Moon Men and the Men of Leng, if anybody knows the Dream Quest story, and you got the Cats of Ulthar on top of them. And it just, he has so much fun with it. I love him, and he's a fun guy for me to talk to. And so we have a lot of fun. And again, we do variants, but we want to try and make them variants plus, that you're getting something a little bit more than you would just another cover.
And of course, here's the cover for the trade paperback. Yeah, I'm just loving the entire feel of this. So I'm going to end up packing this before the thing's out.
Yeah, and so there's the book that he did for number one. We ran out of them. He refused to do more than 50 of them, and so we ran out. But when we printed them, the printer misprinted this one, printed the cover off just slightly, and they sent 50 to us and said, "Okay, you keep them." And I'm like, "Well, what are we going to do with them?" So the deal is, Venian, the artist, he does Gickley prints. And so the deal is, if you buy one of his Gickley prints, we'll give you the free misprint.
Ooh.
So, like and yeah.
And all these add-ons, I'm guessing. Here we go. Here's, oh man.
Yep. And again, a lot of these things. So we do each one during an issue. So, for the first trade paperback, we did metal bookmarks. And what we did was we personalized them. So you could get your name on that metal bookmark with the little tentacle to hold your space. And yeah. So we did that to thank our backers. And, I have extra ones that I can't put names on anymore, but that we're happy to sell. And so, like you said, when you ordered those 1,500 as opposed to 500, you have a bunch of them left over. So we have a lot of these things left over from other Kickstarters that, if people want to get, we're happy to give them to them.
Now, I've seen a lot of people do patches, and for a private school, that's exactly the perfect thing to have as a patch.
Yeah, people have been sending them to me. They're really excited to get them. They're iron-on patches. They put them on like backpacks and jackets. I'm really waiting for the person who puts it on a blazer and starts cosplaying. That's when I know that I've really made it.
That's when you've made it, yes.
Yeah.
Now, I've not seen anybody do keychains before, because that would seem like a high-end, high bulk order that you'd have to do to get that to become cost effective.
Right. And again, this is, if you do your marketing and you have an idea that you can do certain tiers, like most of our tiers stay the same. It's just we change the items in them. And so I know that if I do a keychain at an early tier and it goes through all the other tiers, then I'm probably going to sell 100 of them. And I know if I'm going to sell 100 of them, I know that I can go to the people who make them and say, okay, how much does it cost for 100? It costs, $400 or whatever it is. Okay, I can get those. I can sell them for $6 a piece. I'm making a little bit of money. People are getting a cool keychain, and it really works out.
Yeah. Now the pins, of course, that's a different sticker mule by pins.
Yeah, we don't do them that often. We did them for our Halloween issue, which we had fun with. And to be perfectly honest, I like pins. They're perfectly fine. I prefer the enamel pins. I think they just feel nicer and they're cooler.
Yeah.
I probably should do more of the regular pins because, again, like you said, sticker mule, you can do them.
And these are more the buttons, the button pins that
right, that you can put on anything.
Yeah.
Yep. Right there.
I like them.
Yeah. Like flair, if you will, if you remember.
Yes. If you have enough flair. I have 14 pieces. What's enough? Well, 14.
Right. Just tell me, how many am I supposed to put on?
Oh man, burn this place to the ground. The glow-in-the-dark temporary tattoos, and ooh, you can add on the trade paperback if you just want to get this. Now this is what you're talking about here. These enamel pins, yes, yeah. These are freaking cool. There's no price of this, Mike.
Yeah, I literally I took that picture the day I was getting the Kickstarter ready, and then the next day we were launching. So I was just happy to get something up there all together.
Oh, but they're $7 each as an add-on, so that's a really nice price.
Right. Again, we don't mark things up very much. We're not trying to get rich here. We're just trying to make these items and not go broke.
Yeah. The trading card set. I've always told the crowdfunded people, and no one's listened to me yet, that you all are doing trading cards wrong.
Okay.
Now,
do them in packs.
You're doing them in packs. That's the thing. You're sending out 9. I bet you're sending out 9 trading cards. You'll remember the X-Men Fleer cards in the 90s.
I was literally talking about them 2 days ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was, first of all, there was the chase. You were buying packs, and you're like, oh, I got 2 of those. I got 1 of these already. But then you would
gotta find those hologram cards.
Yeah, you'd put them in your 3x3 page that was in your 3-hole binder.
Yep.
And when you got a page full, you had Gambit, Rogue, Long Shot, You had 9 different ones, but you also had a big picture.
Right. Would it
Because
make you feel any better if I told you that the 9 cards that we're doing that's personalized, you can put them 3 by 3 and they make a big picture?
That's cool, but that's not the cool.
Okay. Sorry.
That's not the chase cool.
Damn it.
Here's my vision. And I'm like, you remember I said how all the campaigns, you guys are helping each other out. You know, you're talking with each other. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
why can't you get 9 people, 9 campaigns, 1 artist, say, draw all 9 of our main franchise characters on different cards. My card will come with my campaign.
Yeah.
Your card will come with your campaign. Oh, you bought my campaign. You got my card. Yes, here it is. Do you notice that it's part of a picture? Here's the other 8 campaigns that have the cards that complete this. And you know we are OCD enough that we have to go out now and back 8 other campaigns to complete the card set.
Well, here, let me put it this way is the reason that probably you don't get it. Do you remember back when Image and was it Valiant did their crossover, like Dark Checkmate or something like that?
Yep, forgettable.
And remember how, I think it was Valiant, put out all of their books on time, and Image books came out about 3 years later, the ones that came out and then the other ones that didn't?
Yes.
Again, God love them. I love people who do indie comics. How much are you going to count on them to put out their things on time?
Or even successfully fund.
You know, so we did the crossover. So, okay, let me back this up a little. So we were doing our Kickstarter. I think it was like number 4, number 5. I can't remember. And this guy emailed me and said, look, I'm getting ready to do my 3rd or 4th Kickstarter. Would you mind taking a look? And I was like, no, of course not. I'm happy to help. And so I look, and it was for the 2nd trade of Lovecraft PI. And it wasn't anything that I heard about, but I started looking into it, reading his Kickstarter page. And the art was amazing, but more so the concept really got me. I like Lovecraft comics. I like all kinds of Lovecraft comics. I like there are ones that will stick very close to Lovecraft. You know, they're adaptations of him or will stick to the time period or whatever. And I like those and I read those. But the things that I really like are the things that take an element of Lovecraft and run it in a different direction. Because that's really what we do.
Dynamite's Page did that for a good run.
Right. And so what I really liked about Lovecraft PI was it takes this idea of the Lovecraft mythos and then combines it with like noir private detective. And that's like really cool. It's taking Lovecraft, but going in a new direction. So it has all that noir twist to it. And it's got that, you know, the hard-edged dame, and you're not sure whether she's good or she's bad. And, you know, and it even took it one step further because it said the private dick is a different version of H.P. Lovecraft himself. If things had gone differently, if he had gone to World War I and come back a different guy, would he have gone in this direction? And that's such a great concept. I love that. You know, it's taking these ideas and running with them in a new direction. And so I responded, I backed it. We started talking. He went to more cons than I did. He started selling my comic at his con. I started including his books on our Kickstarters because we wanted to sell them. And at some point, one of us said, hey, look, do you want to do a crossover? And we're like, yeah. And the thing about it was he had been established enough. He's done 2 trades worth. You know, we had done 1 trade's worth by that point, and we're working on our 2nd season at that point. We had been around long enough that we could sort of trust each other that we weren't going to suddenly disappear.
Right.
And so, you know, we just started working at it. And, you know, the idea was, again, I'm old. Do you remember back when Magnum PI was on, and then right after that was Simon & Simon?
Yes.
And every now and again, Simon & Simon would show up on Magnum PI, and, you know, they would turn up in Hawaii and try and solve the mystery or whatever. And then it would go to the 2nd episode, which would be Simon & Simon, and Magnum PI would be on Simon & Simon, except for it would be Magnum PI because they couldn't afford Tom Selleck. So it would be like Higgins or somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And so like, that was that like blew my mind as a kid, like that these two separate things could cross over. Like that was my first idea of a crossover. And so between us, we said, okay, what if we do one issue in Miskatonic High times, in Miskatonic time, you know, the Miskatonic High team will do it. We'll write it, you know, we'll draw it. And then they meet Lovecraft PI, they tangle with this monster, and then at the very end of it, they go back in time to Lovecraft PI times. And then it's drawn by the Lovecraft PI team. It's written by the Lovecraft PI team. And it's really like you're going into their world, you're going into their TV show. And it's like he responded to that. He said, yes, absolutely, I want to do it. And I said, great, because I've already come up with an idea. And we ran with it. And you know, you were talking before about the ego, and it's sort of the other side of that. When you want to work with these other people, you can't have too much ego involved. You know, I can't, you know, I couldn't turn over my characters to him and say, well, no, you don't write them that way. You know, she is only on Instagram. She's not on Facebook. Because, you know, you got to have faith that they're going to do the things. And we both didn't have a ton of ego about our things and allowed the other team to sort of have fun with their characters. And it was a blast to do. And, you know, I'm not kidding. We sent it out to people. People responded like nuts to it. A, the idea of two indie comics doing a crossover, but B, it's just a lot of fun, you know, that it was a well-written story to introduce these characters in a quick way that you could get a feel for the story and you could read it. And we sent it out to people who hadn't read the rest of the thing, and they're hooked. They want to get the rest of it.
Yeah, and you know, of course, the best thing about a crossover, especially an intercompany, quote unquote, company crossover, that both of them have their built-in fan bases that are being introduced to something new, and what they're being introduced to is something that they're already organically going to like, but may not have known about.
Right. And, you know, I think back to when I was a kid. I was more of a Marvel kid than I was a DC kid. So I would read, you know, The Fall of the Mutants or I forget, Inferno or one of those. And you would have to get all the other comics that it was in. But back then, like, that was cool because you saw it through the other teams. You really got a feeling for what that other stories were. Like when X-Men and Power Pack ended up together, it's like, okay, that's interesting. I've never read Power Pack, but now I have. And, you know, this is actually not too bad, you know? And, you know, it's a cool way to find out other stories that you wouldn't necessarily think to look at. And it's kind of like the sampler pack of those little cereals that you get at the grocery store. You get, you know, 8 of them. And, you know, I may not like Cocoa Krispies, but man, do I now love Corn Pops.
Yeah. Yeah. The crossovers that would get me would be like, I was, you know, hang on, I'll show you something here. I got to take the screen share off for this.
All right.
Because God knows what my browser history might have. I write this book series called The Destroyer with Remo Williams.
Oh, nice.
I look up stuff that I'm surprised the FBI has not been visiting me for a while, because I'm like always, how could I destroy the earth this time and blow up a building?
Right.
So the year was 1985. I feel like Sophia on Golden Girls. Picture it, Sicily, 1940.
Dorothy, shut up.
The year was 1985, and young RJ was a senior in high school. And the yearbook committee said, "We're going to come over to your house, and we're going to take a picture of your room and all the comic stuff you told us about." So here I am. Yes, George Perez had drawn Jericho, and I'm like, I can grow those sideburns and look just as.
Oh wow! Yeah, you really are those the full mutton chops? Because I was thinking about that. You know, maybe during the pandemic, just go full mutton chops.
Those were the full. I was also raised in an apostolic religious house, so I was not allowed to grow a beard. But as long as it didn't connect at the chin, it wasn't a beard. So like,
well, and what's kind of cool is if you look at it, you kind of have the reverse of what you have now. It's like, you know, you had everything but the goatee, and now you have the goatee and not the rest of it.
This worked out a lot better, I thought. But you can see that I was, you know, heavily into New Teen Titans and heavily into X-Men. So the crossover that I loved was that
I know exactly where you're going.
Uncanny X-Men New Teen Titans that
Right.
that Claremont and Simonson did. But even more than that, as much as that's a classic, and I do still have it, there was an indie comic that wanted to cross over with the New Teen Titans and couldn't, but did anyway. Now this was Mark Evaniers' book, DNA Agents.
DNA Agents, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't make it happen officially, so in the New Teen Titans, they went across ran across a team called the Recombinants, the Recombatants, and one-for-one analog with everyone in the DNA Agents. And over in DNA Agents, they came across a team that was one-for-one analog with all the New Teen Titans. From like the kid sidekick, the animal shape changer, the alien princess, and I was like, I would have paid really good money to have both of the real teams in one book, but DC had entered that era where they're like, no more crossovers. This doesn't work for us. We stay in house.
Right. And, that's like, we talked about that, but that's really the glory of doing an indie comic is you don't have anybody telling you not to do it. Like, I'm sure if we had a real publisher or a real editor, they probably would have said, wait, you want to cross over with something called Lovecraft PI, but have you looked at the demographics? Have you, researched whether Lovecraft is in or not, or whether that's, something you can say on Twitter or not? Again, it's the great thing about being an indie comic is you can do whatever you want and there's no one to stop you, which is also the downfall because you can do whatever you want and no one will stop you. But okay, so you were mentioning X-Men and Teen Titans. Again, yes. I was a Marvel kid. The crossover that I look at is this little one called Fantastic Four versus the X-Men, 1986, I believe. So while you have Dark Knight, I think you have Watchmen starting, all of this great stuff. Marvel marketing has decided the best thing that they can do is put out something called Fantastic Four versus the X-Men.
They're two top-selling titles at the time.
Right, and they didn't care who wrote it. They just said, we are doing this. We don't care who writes it. We're going to put it out. It's going to sell. And so they went to Claremont, and Chris Claremont said, I'm writing it. You got to let me write it. And so he wrote it. And the thing is, he could have made it an absolute – he didn't have to do anything. But Chris Claremont, being Chris Claremont, he did a great version of Fantastic Four, which if you like Fantastic Four, I strongly encourage you to look at it. But he fit it into the context of where X-Men was at the time. And where X-Men was at the time was Fall of the Mutants. Kitty Pryde was dying. Nightcrawler was a mess. Colossus was a mess, all of that. It was before Excalibur, all of that. And so Kitty Pryde is dying. Her molecules are falling apart. She can't unphase. And they go to Reed Richards. Reed Richards can't fix her. He's got problems of his own. And so Dr. Doom shows up and says, I will help you. And Kitty Pryde knows that if Dr. Doom helps her, saves her, the X-Men are going to be indebted to Dr. Doom for the rest of their lives. And so what she does is she decides, I can't put my friends into that situation. I'm going to go out, stand on the top of this roof of this castle, and I'm going to let the wind blow me away. I'm like a 12-year-old kid reading this. This is high drama. I understand these feelings exactly because, the swirl of emotions, I'm feeling this or hungry at any given time. And then little Franklin Richards comes in his dream state, and he's crying to Kitty to please come back in, to please don't do this. It was so good. I loved it. And so that is, when I think of crossovers, that's what I think of, because I think, okay, it's a cool story. You really explore the characters on both sides, but you make it canon and you make it important to your story. And so that's something that we both embraced when we did our crossover. It's about our characters. They really go through things, and it's really part of the canon of what we do.
Yeah, and well, I'm old. I'm very old. I actually still have my Superman Spider-Man crossover in the oversized format.
Oh wow! Okay, you got me beat.
Both of them. But I think what really kicked off the crossover craze, intra company, I guess, Crisis and Secret Wars. I mean, that was everybody, all hands on deck. That had never happened before. I was super excited about both of those. So I finally made it down to your art.
Yeah. So here, once you get to the very bottom, you can get a few sample pages from this issue. And so, so that's her entering the dream world. I do the lettering. Ryan does the art, and we just have fun with it.
Lettering is a very unappreciated art because if you do it wrong, it stands out, and if you do it right, nobody notices it because.
Right. Well, here's the thing. So
notice it.
Here's the thing. So it's kind of like the coloring. People don't tend to notice the coloring again unless it's really bad.
Yeah.
But what Ryan has done, so again, when we were entering into this, we knew it was going to be the two of us. We couldn't afford a real colorist. We couldn't afford, anything like that. And so we knew he was going to do it. We wanted to harken back to the flat colors, but with just a twinge of shading here and there to really make it feel lush and interesting. So it's really, he's doing interesting things with the coloring. Yeah, I don't know if you've found this, but if you challenge artists with a limitation and say, here's the limitation, find the most creative thing you can do with that limitation, they can usually do really interesting things. And so he's got a real interesting color palette. We have a lot of light blues and a lot of light pinks in our comics, and it's such an interesting color combination. And it's not something you really see anyplace else. And it's come to represent our comic in a way that's really cool. And kind of the same with my lettering. I have come to really love lettering because it allows me to do a rewrite at the very end. But, just keep it simple, but have fun with it.
These print issues, I'm scrolling up and down to give people aneurysms and epilepsy. Seizures. That's the word I'm looking for. Don't get old, Mike. It sucks. It really does.
You're telling me my knees hurt every time I wake up.
I don't mind my knees hurting. It's this whole business where I'm talking to somebody and I've got to triangulate the word that I'm, what's that place? It's over in Europe. You fried Greece. Yeah.
Well, I do that thing where I'm calling to my kid and I go through every other name. Like I'm calling him my cat's name for some reason. Like, I don't know why I'm calling him my cat's name. It's just, I can't think straight. So yeah, I'm there.
It gets worse. It doesn't get any better.
Oh, well, thanks.
These issues are, they're cheap. They're cheap as hell.
Yeah. So again,
I'm going to back, but I'm going to tell you, I did not see the add-on that I was really wanting to see.
Which one?
Sticker of the logo, die cut, to go on the back of my laptop with all the other projects I backed.
Tell you what, you let me know, and I will go ahead and put a note because I have done them in the past. For some reason, I'm in the process of turning my stickers into like a sticker pack where you get like 5 or 6 stickers.
Ooh,
and so I didn't do the
thing.
Yeah, so I didn't do the one at a time like I normally do, and so I literally just took it off of this one. If you had backed the last one, it would be on there. So just let me know, and I'll put one in there. And actually, that goes for anybody else on here. So if you back and you want a sticker, just shoot me an email, say that you heard me on Critical Blast, and I will go ahead and include a sticker in there.
All right. I just thought maybe they didn't exist, so I was.
No, they exist. Yeah, I have one on my laptop. I have, I use them all the time. We actually did a bumper sticker that is. My kid is going insane at Miskatonic High.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yep. Yeah. So again, we're just having fun with it. And, again, I look at a lot of Kickstarters. I see the prices that people are charging for their comics. And don't get me wrong, because I understand very, very well exactly why they do it. If you have a writer, if you have an artist, if you have a inker, if you have a colorist, if you have a letterer, I'm not kidding. So if we had any of those three other people, we would be losing money every time out. Yeah. That's how tight indie comics is. It really is. And so I understand exactly why they need to charge what they do. But our thing was always, the money's not important. What's important to us is we want people to read our comics. We want to get it out as far and as wide as we possibly can, because we think if you get it, if you try it, you're going to like it and you're going to follow it. And that's really what we want. We're here for the long haul. We're making cool comics. We've got stories to tell. We want you to be part of it.
Yeah. And I'm going to say one more thing about the add-ons, as far as, the tchotchkes and stuff, is that yours differ from all the other ones I've seen. Most of the other ones I've seen, I won't say all, in that you're leaning into what the book is about.
Yeah.
When you have you can't just put your logo on a bumper sticker and say, look, I made a sticker for my book. But when you're going with something like who hasn't seen my kid is a student at, my kid's an honor roll student at, but you're going and saying that fits the theme of the book. When you have patches and it's a blazer patch and they're all at private school, then that fits the theme of the book.
Well, and our personal thank yous. So this one is the card set. And we wanted to do the nine cards, the actual image, if you put them all together, because this issue goes to so many different places in the Dreamlands and had such different things. We wanted to come up with a personal item that felt like that issue. The one before this, it was our noir, and there was a speakeasy with ghosts. And so we put together a speakeasy invitation, that was in, old 1920s Art Deco style, and it had your name, and it said, come for jazz and eldritch magic at, at the Yellow King Inn, and it had your name on it, and so you were invited. And so, yeah, we really want you to feel like you're immersed in this comic, that you're enjoying the comic, that you're feeling like you're part of the story.
Now, I didn't even look at this number, Mike, before I started here. 27 days to go. How long was this campaign?
We almost always do 30 days. So we have been doing that forever. Yeah.
So in 3 days, this thing has made $11,500.
Right. But I mean, you must know by now that if you have fans who are following you,
they're going to jump in right away.
They turn up first day. We do almost 50% of our business first day.
So with this going through March 25th and knowing how far ahead you guys are and staying ahead, I'm going to guess that fulfillment starts happening on March 26th.
Almost immediately. So because we have a thank you page, we have to wait for people to tell us what names they want in them. So generally we have about 3 or 4 days, and we have generally trained our backers that please get us your name within 3 days, or we're going to put the name that Kickstarter has for you in the book, because we've already ordered the books by that point. We've already sent in the files to the book by that point. We have found a printer that will turn around books in about 2 weeks. It's cost is less of an issue for us with the printer, and it's more about turnaround time. We want quick turnaround time. And so that's what we do. And so usually they're back within 3 weeks or so. And I'm sending them out that week. And usually it takes me about a week to fulfill or so.
All right. Folks, this is for issue number 10 of Miskatonic High. Mike has been at this for a while. He knows what he's doing. This book is coming out. I'm going to tell you, if you're used to crowdfunding comics on Indiegogo, jump down to that $50 tier for the shunned issues, because you're spending $50 on a graphic novel when you get it off Indiegogo anyway. And you're going to get 10. You're going to get all 10 comic books plus the 2 issues of the crossover with Lovecraft PI. So that's 12 books you're going to get for $50. I dare you to go to your local comic shop and get 10 books off 12 books off the rack and not spend $50 at the counter when you get there.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, we've had good luck both. We have been on Indiegogo. Don't ask me why people didn't respond when we were there.
They're different markets. Something does well here doesn't do well there, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is, but one of the things, and this is my pocket theory, so don't take it to the bank, is again, we've done 10 issues. We've built up an audience that expects us to be on Kickstarter because they know that we're always there. And so I think when we've done things on Indiegogo, they don't think of us as an Indiegogo comic. They don't think of us being there. And so they sort of just respond to us when we're on Kickstarter. And I look at the numbers, and a lot of people just find us on Kickstarter. They're just looking around and they happen to find us. And for some reason, I think probably because we didn't get off to a fast start on Indiegogo, we didn't get a lot of that. So yeah, I mean, again, the people that I know who do both, because I back comics on Indiegogo as well, is generally I don't notice a whole lot of difference. Again, what I'm finding is quality. Like, I'm looking for good writing, I'm looking for good art, and you can find it on either one.
Exactly. I know some will start their thing on Kickstarter because that's where their audience is. Mm-hmm. And then when their Kickstarter is done, they'll go over to Indiegogo for a minimum goal to take advantage of the in-demand option that Indiegogo offers.
We thought about doing that, but I got to tell you honestly, like, the joy for us is putting people's names in the back of the book. And we couldn't do that if we were on in demand because we moved too fast.
I would recommend, if you were ever going to think about Indiegogo, I would use it for something like your omnibus edition. Like if you get all 12 issues collected into something, because you're not going to change anything for that. New cover, probably an Indiegogo exclusive cover.
Right.
But other than that.
Again, we are sort of maximizing the Kickstarter platform anyway, because we're here every other month anyway. If you want to get our omnibus, 50% of the time we're there anyway.
This is true. And this is the other thing, folks. He's on issue 10 here. This launched in February 3 days ago. It's going to finish March 25th. April, they're going to be launching issue number 11, and it's going to run through the end of May. And then in June, be issue number 12. This is like a bi-monthly book at your LCS. It's just your LCS's Kickstarter in this case. I've not seen anything crowdfunded that's gone into double digits on an issue.
No, to be fair to people, because I've run into creators who do this. Crowdfunding takes different muscles. It takes, and it's a lot of work. People will tell you some people treat it like a full-time job, just doing the crowdfunding part of it, not even the making of the comic. And a lot of them, I've noticed, tend to move towards graphic novel size. So they'll do 1 a year rather than doing 6 a year like we would. And I don't blame them, if that's your thing. For me, doing crowdfunding exercises those different muscles in a way that I really love. I can put together a little trailer like this, and that's my one day. And then the next day I'm making acrylic standees, and that's really fun, and then the next day I'm making bumper stickers, and that's really fun. And then the next day I'm going back to lettering, so I get to do a lot of different things, and I really, really like it. And I know not everybody feels that way.
But you get to do it all, and you have to do it all.
Yeah. It's funny because here's where I come from. I've talked to other creators who do this. And the thing about it is, I really believe it's a mentality. If there's something you hate doing, like when I was early on in my marriage, I hated having to do the dishes all the time. I didn't make all the dishes dirty, but for some reason I was cleaning up all the dishes. And at some point, you realize how much negative energy you're giving to having to do the stupid dishes. And it's become a burden because you made it a burden. And if you can find a way to turn that and say, okay, you know what? This is a minute or two that I get to spend by myself. My mind gets to be wherever I want to be. And I'm just loading the dishwasher.
Yep.
And it's not a bad thing. And it's not a horrible thing. And, in some ways it's kind of like my time. I back pre-pandemic days, I took the subway to work, and some people hate their commute, and I love it because it's 45 minutes that I get to spend on a train by myself doing whatever I want.
Oh yeah, Yeah, 45 minutes was my commute, and I would watch whatever was on CW the night before. Now, granted, I was driving a car down the interstate doing that. So.
Well, now you have self-driving cars for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
I
it's
watching. I was sort of like
right. Yeah, I will have been known to do football highlights that way, on Monday. But yeah, I really believe that part of it is the mentality of it. Like, if there's something that you really hate doing, try to find a way to think about it differently, because there's nothing that says that it's a horrible thing to do. You've just made it into a horrible thing. And I think that's true for fulfillment for a lot of people. Like, they really hate sending out the things through the mail or whatever. And I have gotten to a point where I think, look, this is a way for me to thank my backers. They let me write a comic that doesn't cost me $500 every month to do it. They let me do this in a way that I don't lose, money at doing it. It doesn't cost me an arm and a leg to do it. They let me do this. And as a way for me to thank them, I get to make sure that they get their rewards nicely.
And
that's no.
I happen to love fulfilling comics. It's it's like this nice mindless task list. It's like,
right.
Like, these all go in this, which is why UK, Australia, Canada, we love you. But I've decided, anybody domestic, if you think that your time is more profitably spent drawing the next page of your comic than it is spending a week shoving stuff into envelopes, at Critical Blast at Twitter, or criticalblast at criticalblast.com, and let us.
Believe me, I'm going to be telling quite a few creators that I talk to that you're doing this, because they hate doing fulfillment and they want to find somebody else to do it. I have been propositioned a number of times, not always about fulfillment, but sometimes about fulfillment. And I'm not going to do your fulfillment for you. So if there is a resource out there that will do fulfillment, you will be very, very popular.
Well, there's been been people who wanted to do it, but the trust factor. Not that I'm saying I'm just another guy out there too. I could be having watches under a trench coat. Hey, you want to buy one of these?
I do.
I want to get those comics, and We know comics. We love comics.
Yep.
We know how to treat them and handle them. There have been when I say there were other people who did fulfillment, they were printers who were like, yeah, we can just send it straight to the person for you. Well, they printed up what to them is another magazine or another catalog, so it went in an envelope and out in the mail.
Right, and it's just the envelope, no support whatsoever on there.
Oh, what was it called? Stealing Solo. The Star Wars comic where they just basically slapped a label on the back cover and out it went.
I got to tell you though, that's kind of, if you look at it a different way, that's kind of genius. It's like, if this thing wasn't a collector's edition, if this was just something that I did really cheap and charged people like a quarter for, and just said, look, you're just getting it, like a magazine, like a catalog, and you're just going to get it in the mail. That's kind of genius. It takes away a lot of the fulfillment stuff of it. There is somebody who's going to figure out how to do that and turn it into a thing. I tell you.
Well, again, old school. I actually had a subscription to some DC comics at the time, and Archie comics back then. Yep. And all it was just a plain brown wrapper around the book itself, flat.
Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah.
I got Marvel comics that same way. I can't possibly remember what they were. I think they were X-Men at some point, or some, before they had 17 different X-Men comics.
Yeah, I don't know how it didn't slide out of the wrapper, because it was just literally around the side of it.
Right. I don't know, but yeah, we used to get them that way, and it was great. I remember comic subscriptions. That was a thing.
Yeah, it was. Archie still does it. My son gets a subscription to whatever the 12-run Archie Digest is for that year. Like right now, it's like Archie Milestones or something, 80th anniversary. So whenever they feel like doing it, apparently it seems like, because it sure isn't every month, they'll get a digest in the mail over the next year.
And the thing about it is, that's, Archie comics, again, I make fun of them earlier, but I read Archie comics as a kid. They were a great way to get into comics. And, one of the things, again, digging through that 10-cent drawer, you found all kinds of comics. It wasn't just superhero comics. You got Archie comics, you got romance comics, you got Western comics, you got motorcycle comics, you got
Yeah.
Indie comics, you got fairy tale comics, you got you name it. It really feels to me like what you could find today crowdfunding, because the ones that I seem to see that do well are the ones that think outside of the superhero box. You know, if you want superhero comics, you're probably buying them DC or Marvel,
Sure.
you know, or maybe some of the other independents. But if you want a horror comic, maybe you're doing Walking Dead, but you're probably looking towards an indie comic.
That's what's happening now, because right now it's all like different Frankenstein retellings or werewolf stories.
Right.
And you talked about your friend on Patreon. I had a guy that I talked with, had multiple interviews with him on here about his book Confederate Monster, which was Igor coming to the States after the whole Frankenstein incident.
Nice.
You know, it's 1850. And
Right.
we're kind of busy with something here.
Yeah.
And they figure out that, oh, you're that guy who knows how to raise the dead, and we're losing a lot of soldiers, and we'd like them back.
That is a great concept. I love that.
Well, Confederate Monster, he finally came up on our last week or so. Said, okay, I did the 1 through 3 issues on Patreon. I didn't do well at all.
Right.
We're going Indiegogo with it. So he's put 1 through 3 in a book or in a pack, and it's out there now. He's making physical copies of it instead of the 1 digital page per day. So like, yeah, that's Patreon has uses, but
right. And I got to tell you, so I have friends who do web comics and do that, you know, do the 1 page at a time. And the thing about it is, what I found is they love comics just as much as anybody else, and their comics are just as good. I read one called The Pale. It's kind of Twin Peaks sort of out in the desert. And it is really, really good. They're up to, I think, 6 issues, maybe 7 issues now. And they do 1 page at a time. And I just happened to stumble on it, found out that they do physical. I prefer physical because I'm old and I like to, you know, hold it up close to my face.
yeah.
So I bought theirs and I absolutely love it. And they do it a page at a time, and they haven't really done a whole lot of physical yet. And they are really good. And, you know, the things that like the people on Patreon, you know, we live in such a great time for storytellers to be able to tell comic stories, that there are all these outlets. And I think it's wonderful. I don't care how you get your comics out. We get our comics out the way we do. Other people get their comics out the way they do. Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Patreon, you know, Webtoons, whatever it is. However you are telling your story,
yeah,
it's great. Is, you know, I tell the story, you know, during my 30s, I was really an angry, bitter guy, you know, because I was doing my job, wasn't doing comics, had no idea how to do comics, knew that I wanted to, but didn't know how. Stumbled upon Ryan Mendoza on DeviantArt and convinced him to do fan fiction with me. And we did fan fiction and we liked it. And it was a creative outlet that I needed desperately. And we did it and we put it out, and then we started doing our own comic. And, you know, I look back now and I'm like, I'm so grateful that I get to do this now. I never, ever want to give it up. And I encourage everybody out there who wants to do a comic, find a way to do it. If you have a good story to tell it. Now is a wonderful time to tell it. Try to do it the smart way. Don't make tons of mistakes like we did, or, you know, lots and lots of other people do, but tell your stories, because this is a great time to do it.
Absolutely. My favorite webcomic, I haven't seen it in a long time, was JL8. I can't remember the name.
Familiar.
JL8 was the Justice League as 8-year-olds.
Nice. Okay.
And they were wearing their costumes to school and everything. It was.
Oh man, I don't know if you've seen this one. God, I think his name is Mark Miotti or something like that. He does these comic strips of Batgirl and Supergirl together, and they are lovable. They are so enjoyable. You know, it's less about them fighting or being teenagers or whatever. It's more about Batgirl being dark and broody, and Supergirl being this ray of light who comes in and gives her a scarf and like hot cocoa. And it's just, they're wonderful. I love them. It's kind of, you talk about giving Archie comics to your kids, and I go and get the Scholastic books for my kids. People who love comics, especially parents who love comics, we want our kids to love comics, and we don't want our kids to love stupid comics. We don't. I don't. If my son eventually likes Batman crossed with David Fincher 7, more power to him. But I want to find comics that he's going to respond to and love in a really rich and deep way that's going to inspire his imagination.
And they can't. I don't know. The corporations. I may be wrong, but I just keep saying that the established corporations are now run by people who do not love comics the way.
Oh no, God, they don't. They don't love it at all. They don't even love the movies they make upon these established comics.
No, and animation the same way. I was up with my son. He was 12 at the time. We were watching the Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go. It was the night of the premiere, and they're like, stay tuned for a sneak peek of Thundercats Roar. And he's like, hey, can I stay up and watch that? I'm like, yeah, but let me show you something first. And I brought up Thundercats on my phone. I was like, here's what I used to watch. And he looked at the phone and he looked back up at that commercial. That sucks. I don't want to watch that.
Right.
And we talked about the Scholastic success with all the books that they're selling in the millions of copies.
Right.
The fact that Batman is an $80,000 circulation number is pathetic.
Right.
Indie comics in the 80s that were hard to find were selling 80,000 copies.
Right.
Yeah.
So I am a card-carrying Alan Moore fan. I love Alan Moore dearly. But Watchmen, Dark Knight did something to superheroes that we have never recovered from.
Yeah.
Because I can't give those comics to my 10-year-old and expect him to be okay with. I know eventually he's going to get there, but I can't do it right now. But, I think back when I was starting off, after reading Robotech, I moved into the Marvel comics because I had seen them on TV. I knew who Spider-Man was. I knew who the X-Men were because they had been on an episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I knew who these characters were, and that's why I picked them up. And I could pick up any Spider-Man comic, and it was written to be understood that it was going to be somebody's first comic.
Yeah.
And that they expected Peter Parker to be Peter Parker, to be this geeky, fun guy with, insecurities and all that, exactly who Spider-Man is supposed to be. And I could pick it up and I could respond perfectly. And part of the reason that we do standalone issues, with us, we're not writing for the trade. We are writing for standalone issues because I love standalone issues, but I also know any issue is going to be somebody's first issue. I don't expect them to go back and buy my trade. You can pick up issue 10 that we're doing now and just give it a try and see if you like it. You're going to understand the story from beginning to end. There's going to be things that you're going to be like, oh, that's interesting. I don't completely understand that. Maybe I'll go back and read more, but you'll get the gist of what the story is.
Yeah.
Because I want people to feel like they can pick up any comic and get into it, because, those old axioms about any comic being somebody's first comic, that you need to write these stories that it could be a 40-year-old guy reading it, or it could be a 10-year-old kid reading it, write so that any of them can enjoy it. Because, like the things that I enjoy with my kids, I like Pixar movies. Pixar movies aren't just written for kids,
No. Oh, you got stuff in there that, it's like the old Bullwinkle cartoons. There was stuff in there that went right over the kids' heads, but,
right.
The adults got it and they got a chuckle out of it. But, Scholastic has the success rate, and you're looking at DC saying, okay, well, they want young adult graphic novels. They have such a rich history and such a wide array of characters.
Right.
And they say, okay, well, we're gonna jump on this success bandwagon. And what do they give us? They give us I Am Not Starfire and Nubia. And Nubia looks like it was drawn by a 10-year-old on a shaky car ride over a gravel road.
Right. I gotta tell you, like, when we go to the library, the closest thing that I have found is they have a series of books for kids called like Super Pets or something.
Yeah.
And so it's about like Crypto and whoever Supergirl's cat was. I can't remember the cat's name. Right. And so it's about those. And my daughter is at an age where that's perfect for her. You know, I can start sneaking superheroes into her diet of, you know, cute animals.
Yeah.
And they're actually pretty decent. And but yeah, you know, my kids, they love Scholastic, and I love that they love comics. And more than anything else, I love that they can go and find so many different styles of art, so many different styles of stories. They can find whatever there is. I was reading, again, they're called Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. They're basically history stories for kids. Right. And so I like history, but I don't know that much about it. And we were reading one about Harriet Tubman, and I had no idea. You know, I knew that Harriet Tubman was going to be on the $20. That's about all I knew about her, and it was her story. And I swear to God, that was one of the best written comics I've read in probably the last 20 years. It delved into these visions that she had. It delved into where she belonged in history. There was a portion where she goes back after running away from being a slave, and goes back and goes to see her dad. And the dad is so well known by everybody in his community, and he's still a slave, and that if anybody asks him, he's going to have to tell the truth that he saw her. So he walks with her, and he keeps his eyes closed, so that if anybody ever asked him if he saw her, he can say, no, he didn't.
Wow.
That's like, that is such great storytelling right there. It's they're wonderful books being put out for kids, but anybody can enjoy them. And I wish DC would get bought out by Scholastic. Yeah.
That would be great. They're going to get bought out by somebody real quick here.
Well, and you know, the thing is, DC has a rich history. Open it up. So yeah, you can tell the continuing stories, but you can tell. Remember the old Elseworlds tales?
Love those.
You know,
there was they had multiple Earths.
Mm-hmm.
If something was wrong, they didn't even plan it. It was just like, hey, you know, Superman's S was upside down. Oh, well, that was happening on Earth 215.
Right. And the thing is, you could have a lovable Batman with Batmite and all of this at the same time as you had brooding Batman over here. That's okay. That's wonderful to have these different kinds of stories for different audiences. Not everybody likes vanilla.
Yeah.
We're on a bit of a soapbox.
Yes, we are. So that's usually the time to say it's time to shut things down. But
we're getting a hook.
When things get really, really good. I was going to go on about the whole thing about how nobody's doing webcomics right, because, you know, it's been 20 years since I saw Scott McCloud give his dissertation at Arkadelphia. And he's like, here's the problem with webcomics. You're drawing it like a comic book. You're drawing an 8x10 grid, and then you're putting it out there, and people got to scroll this, and then they got to flip the page. And he showed this beautiful example of his webcomic of Zot.
Zot, yeah, I read it. I read it when it came out.
Did you read the webcomic one?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I read the webcomic when it came out. Okay. I loved his real comics. I'm a bad comic creator because I don't like understanding comics as much as I like Zot. I love Zot so much that when he came out with it, it was wonderful because it scrolled down. Yeah. And he was taking advantage of the form. And, you know, I go back to being a card-carrying member of the Alan Moore fan club. One of the things that he talks about that people don't understand is when he says that his comics can't be movies. He's not saying that they're smarter as comics. He's saying that they can only exist as comics because you can only have panel structure in a comic. You can't show panel structure in a movie. You can only have this in a movie. And you can go back in time in ways in comics that you can't do in here. You can reference things. He was talking about the form of it. They really take advantage of it. And that's something that few comics creators really latched onto. Take this form and go in a different direction with it. Just explore with it. Be crazy with it.
Mike, if you want to have somebody who does with comics the form, what Alan Moore does with comics like he did in Watchmen, and you want to have something for your young girl to read, Jimmy Gownley's Amelia Rules.
Amelia Rules, okay.
Get all the sets from Scholastic. I mean, the man does amazing things with the form, and it's this hilarious, almost Peanuts-like kind of cartoon strip until it rips your heart out.
Yep.
And
okay, you got me. You sold me. I'm there.
Okay, yeah, just get them all. Just get them all. You will thank me They're all ages. I was 45 years old when I was reading The Past is a Present, and I turned that page and it's like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah. So again, I love that stuff. I love the experimental stuff. When we did fan fiction, I don't know if you remember, there was a time when Alan Moore was doing comics for Rob Liefeld.
He did Supreme, and he did Youngblood.
Supreme is my all-time favorite comic. I love that one so much. Then he went on. I feel that it's the best version of Superman stories that were being told. And you can come at me with All-Star Superman, and I'm going to tell you Supreme is better.
Yep.
But he went on and he did Youngblood for 2 issues before Rob Liefeld went bankrupt. He wrote some more scripts that were never published, that got leaked out on the web, and so we started drawing him. And there is one on there that is a choose your own adventure comic. Oh. And it's not just a choose your own adventure comic, it's a choose your own adventure comic about alternate futures. So this is the alternate form of Youngblood if you made this decision. This is the alternate form of Youngblood if they made that decision. I will tell you, it is the most genius thing I have ever read, and it's never been published. It breaks my heart that that's the case. And I would encourage people to go on Google and see if you can find it, because it is genius. But that's the thing that I love about comics creators who really are interested in doing that, is your comic is not a movie printed on a page.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to do anything you want in this form. And further, if you are doing crowdfunded comics, you don't even have somebody telling you that it has to be this shape. You can do whatever you want with it, and I encourage you to do it. I have this story that I want to do in outer space, and I want to have zero gravity, and I want you to be able to turn the comic and read it upside down, because the characters are going to be standing on the ceiling.
Exactly. Beautiful.
Right. Yeah.
Freaking Star Trek took place in outer space, and it was past the original series, well into almost the end of the Next Generation, before somebody said, "Hey, ships can connect like this."
Right.
The first time they did that, we're like, "Holy cow! How did it? Oh wait, it's a 300."
Right. Right. We were talking about, and I want to do this. I haven't figured out how to do this. As a matter of fact, I'll get there in a second. I want to do a 3D comic. Do you remember when 3D comics came out way back in the day, and you had the red and blue glasses?
Yes.
I want to do an issue of Miskatonic High where part of it is in old school 3D. I just think it would be so much fun, and there's nobody to tell me not to.
Yep.
The only problem is I need a colorist who knows how to do it, because nobody does it that way anymore.
Don Chin can help you out.
Don Chin.
Okay. Don Chin has done 3D books before with his adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters.
Yes, I remember those. That's right. Okay.
Yep, and he's been on our show a couple of times. We tweet each other every day. So reach out to Real Don Chin, and he can set you straight on 3D. I was making a joke the other day about something that nobody's done before. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for a different kind of 3D, no one's ever done comic book pop-up.
Oh yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it would be. And the joke was that we were talking about Brian Michael Bendis, and you can't see the picture for all the word balloons. I was like, draw the picture, and then the word balloons could pop up, and you can just read them all and still see the whole picture.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. Well, again, I was a Chris Claremont kid, so he was Bendis before Bendis, with all the words.
Yeah, but he told a good story, and he didn't obscure the art.
Yeah. Well, that's, he had really great artists, and he had really great letterers doing work with him. Not to say that Bendis doesn't. It's funny because some of the things that I have backed on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, I backed just for the sheer audacity of it. I have a friend who does a surreal comic with no words. It's an outer space story, completely surreal, completely, you make your own story. You have to figure out what it is that's going on in it. And it's just, I love the experimental nature of it, and I want to support that. That is cool to me, that you're pushing the boundaries of what comics is. I can't remember how many backers he got. I think he got over 100, and that was really cool. It's just, I love the creativity. I love the freedom that we have now, and I love I find it's an art form if you choose to believe that it's an art form.
Yeah, this is the new golden age of comics.
It really is,
and it's going to be remembered as such. Mike, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. We go an hour regularly every night. I'm scared to death that you're never going to want to come back now, because I've kept you here for 2.5 hours talking about everything, almost everything except your comic, it seems like.
Yeah, how did we do that?
I don't know, but folks,
let's spend the next 2 hours here talking about the comic.
Miskatonic High number 10 is on Kickstarter. The link is in the description below. Click on it while you can. There's still a month to go on this thing.
Yep, you are guaranteed. You are guaranteed to get it. We're getting into stretch goals, so there's going to be more stuff coming. Again, we're gonna do it. We're gonna mail it to you. At this point, we've done 10. You can trust us. We're gonna get you your comic.
It's gonna happen. Mike, Thank you for coming on the show. Everyone in the chat, appreciate the comments. We don't have a show if you don't come and watch it. So
yeah, thank you guys so much.
Here. And as every night, we just